So the start of the race is crucial in Monaco. Qualifying is important, but the next best place, maybe the only last place to make a place, is off the line. And everyone knows that. And that's why we had 3 separate incidents on the opening lap. So let's start with the first one at turn 1. And this is a tiny touch between Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz. Sainz gets the better start in the Ferrari off the second row, gets alongside Piastri, and actually has a glorious chance to make this Ferrari 1-2. If I pause it there, you can see he's actually slightly ahead coming into this first corner. But Piastri is really brave at this point, goes around the outside, hangs it there with a bit of space because Sainz is stuck behind his teammate directly ahead. So there's limited space for Carlos to get off the brakes because he's probably going to get into the dirty area, maybe even touch his teammate ahead. Oscar's got a nice clearer run on the outside there, so he can carry the speed, but it's still brave because that wall is coming very, very close on the exit. It really pinches in. There's a curb there as well. Oscar uses all the space, and there is an imperceptible touch between the two, but it's enough to almost derail Carlos Sainz's race from third place, nearly second, nearly out. In the end, none of it counted. But let's have a look from the outside, and you can see a little bit more clearly now why the inside line off the start is just so beneficial. It curves so well around this bend. You can't actually see turn 1 from pole position. That's why it's been over 20 years since the poleman was actually jumped into the first corner. And that is why so much of winning Monaco is about taking pole on Saturday. That's where Leclerc's magic really shone through. As we play this one through, you can see as well how the advantage sort of goes all the way down the field as well. So you've got, as we spoke about, Sainz slightly ahead of Piastri into the first corner. Look at Hamilton coming alongside Verstappen, Albon coming alongside Tsunoda, and even further back there, you've got 2 more, the 2 Alpines fighting it out further back. So pretty much everyone is having to defend from the outside line. Still an advantage to be second than third, but that's your tight spot, really. So it's a good attacking chance for Carlos Sainz. And as we jump on board with him, let's have a look at how it seemed on board then with Oscar Piastri first in the McLaren. Gets an okay launch, but Leclerc, with that shorter distance, has the advantage into turn 1. And then also Sainz comes through on the inside. Piastri opens it up. This is really, really tight with the 2 cars. You can see the end of Sainz's front wing. They're just dropping back right on the corner of the shot, just around there. And Oscar doesn't have a lot of margin to give on his left-hand side either. It's so close between the Ferrari and the wall for Piastri. It was a brave move. And it ends up earning him second place with a tiny little bit of contact at that point. So he has to fight the car, looks in the mirror, and Sainz is disappearing backwards with a puncture. And then let's have a look on board with Carlos and see just how small this bit of contact was between himself and Piastri that should have been pretty much race-ending. Come into the first corner. Looks like he's going to get the move done, but Piastri hangs it out. Then it's this edge of carbon fibre here that is going to do for the left front of Carlos Sainz. There we go, and just runs straight into the underbody of that floor from Piastri. Should be an absolute nothing bit of contact for Sainz. That so many times you see a bit of wheel banging, this sort of thing, and in fact Piastri there with the carbon fibre would be more exposed. Piastri picked up a tiny bit of damage as well to the aerodynamics, which is so crucial there on the McLaren at the floor. But more critically, Sainz immediately feels he has a puncture, backs off, and will not make it through Casino Square without going wide and locking up and losing all those places. Should have been race over, really, for Sainz, but we're going to get into why it wasn't in just a moment. But that was your first incident, and that on its own was quite dramatic at the start.
Sainz, he has got a problem, he's off, and he's out!
Just try to come back if you can.
Yeah, I'm on it. Puncture or front wing?
Puncture for sure. Front wing, we are checking. We have red flag.
Ricky, please tell me we start P3.
But it paled into insignificance when we saw what happened further back. Kevin Magnussen and Sergio Perez having contact, completely needless, and a whopping impact for both Haas cars, but Sergio Perez's Red Bull completely destroyed. Let's have a look at them then coming through Saint-Devote. You've got Magnussen on the inside, fighting with his teammate initially, but Perez doesn't get a good exit from this corner, and Magnussen thinks he can come up the inside, so he just lights it up. He's desperate to get that bit of space, and there is a little bit of space for K-Mag as he's coming alongside Perez here. But this is such a difficult section of circuit. Up Beau Rivage, it's flat out, so you feel like it's a straight, but you can see it's anything but a straight with the circuit wiggling through up there. And that means it's really difficult for drivers to give each other a bit of space here and there. It's also narrow when you're sitting on the ground, looking up at the sky towards Massenet at the top of the hill, it is very, very difficult. And you can see here, Perez has got Magnussen on his right-hand side. He's also got Nico Hulkenberg pretty close to his left as well. So he's got his mirrors full of Haas cars. As we play it through, you can see Magnussen already right up to the wall, potentially in the wall there, keeps his foot buried in, and Perez doesn't give him the space, and the two have contact, and Magnussen ends up driving Perez into the wall, which is why that crash was as ferocious as it was for Sergio Perez. High speed and literally being driven into the wall by Kevin Magnussen. Big impact, not investigated by the stewards. And I think this one is a tricky one on both parts. Firstly, we jump on board with Perez, and he is very aware of what's going on here with K-Mag. As we play this one through, comes out of the corner, straightens it up, and he knows he's not got a good exit. He's fighting the car. Now the car settles down, and you can just see him constantly checking this mirror. As we play it forward, there we go again, looking and seeing Magnussen. Now he could avoid this incident. He could open up, drive slightly to the left, give Magnussen space. They'll go through side by side, and surely Perez will still come out ahead at the top. But it's hairy around here, so you don't really want to have Magnussen dipping a nose in on the inside on this corner. But Checo checks a few times and then is hit into that spin and a big collision for him. And there you see the force of the Haas as well, driving and destroying the barrier. Hulkenberg's caught up in it. Perez, I don't think at this point quite realises what's happened between which Haas, but it's a Magnussen-Perez incident in which Nico Hulkenberg was the unlucky victim of it as well, out of the race. And here's going to be the angle then, looking at it from K-Mag's point of view. Gets a little run. He's got the faintest of overlaps at this point, and now he just wants to keep it because he's got the momentum. You can see his front wheels coming alongside the rear wheels of Sergio Perez. Now, if this is a straight, then he deserves to have the space up into Massenet. And that's what Magnussen was sort of arguing after the race, that it's effectively a straight. It's a flat-out section. You can fit two cars alongside each other. It's hairy, it's tight, but you can do it. And so he wanted Perez to give him the space and they can go wheel to wheel up the hill. If this was grass on the side and Perez forced Magnussen onto the grass, he'd be in trouble for it. But at the same time, you've got to consider from Magnussen's point of view, he's right up on the wall here. The space is clearly not going to be given by Checo on the left-hand side. At some point, you've got to think, let's actually not crash for 16th position right now. Let's just hold on. He started right at the back. He's already made a couple of places off the line. Let's be a little bit cautious. It's a Red Bull. Don't need to be a hero. But he doesn't back out of it. Kevin Magnussen never backs out of it. And so when Perez really doesn't give the space, there is the contact. In my view, it's one that both drivers could have avoided, but K-Mag probably had the better chance to avoid it. And he's quite lucky, I think, that the stewards didn't investigate that one. But certainly, Checo knew that he was there and also could have opened it up. The unluckiest person here is Nico Hulkenberg, who had a good view of the whole thing and pretty much summed it up like that himself. Magnussen on the inside, Perez doesn't give him space, in they go to the wall, and Hulkenberg just gets tagged, didn't quite know what to do, had a little bit of a break, then tried to throttle it through the gap. Always a tricky one for Nico. 3 cars out, and that brought out a red flag, which was a huge reprieve for Carlos Sainz. So let's finally have a look at how Sainz managed to get back to 3rd place. And the key man here is Zhou in the Sauber, who had a very odd non-racing weekend, really, for Sauber. Miles off the pace. Both Saubers were nowhere. And Zhou in the race didn't seem too interested in getting embroiled in any scraps. It's Monaco, and he probably didn't want to pick up any enduring penalty for Canada, which should be a better race for Sauber. But there you go. Haas already coming through. Hulkenberg and Magnussen straight past him at the start. And now he's at the back of the field. We go up the hill, and this is actually a difficult one. We saw Hulkenberg getting wiped out by this incident. Zhou does the sensible thing, really, at this point. Backs completely out of it. And you can see there is just detritus everywhere on this circuit. Shards of carbon fibre, tyres off. It is absolute chaos for Zhou to try and weave his way through. But he is so slow trying to do it. He doesn't know if he should literally park the car. There's that much debris. So as he's crawling now, just seeing what's going on, waiting to see which car's in a heap at the top of this crest, he actually gets overtaken here by the medical car on the right-hand side, who flies through and nearly gets attacked from that tyre that's flown loose as well. And he is just so slow, being safe and not trying to pick up any damage to the underside of his Sauber that's already having a difficult weekend. Medical car goes through and actually nearly jump out of the car straight into his path. It's so narrow. gets a great shot at some destroyed and mangled Formula One cars. And in all of it, obviously Zhou at this point knows it's going to be a red flag. There's no way that that's going to continue without being a red flag. And you can just see on the top here, flashing green light panel at the top there. And as Zhou comes through, watch out for it. Still green, and there it goes red. So that is now the race suspended. And crucially for Carlos Sainz, Zhou's not through the first sector. And so the order is taken from the start of the race.
Now, you might be wondering about establishing the order. Crucially, Sainz has been given third place. So we did race all the way down to the Nouvelle chicane. We were able to establish an order, but the order for the restart has been given as Sainz, car number 55, in third position. That is a huge let-off for the Spanish driver.
And we can see even more clearly here, all the cars get the launch. All of the cars have to go through the first sector by rule for that to be your determining position for a restart. And as Sainz backs up the punch, there he goes into the runoff area. Everyone else continues. Look at Zhou crawling up the hill. Sainz, in fact, manages to get going at this point. He's picked reverse and can start again. And Zhou is still crawling as Piastri is putting pressure on Charles Leclerc. And only now he gets to the point of it being a red flag. Leclerc's now heading into back with Piastri right behind him, probably absolutely oblivious to the fact that there's been a crash at this stage. He's looking in his mirrors and having to defend the race lead. Sainz himself has gone into towards the runoff area at Casino, managed to get going, and he's well into the middle sector. And it's only Zhou that is a long way away from the end of the first sector, which comes there. And that is why Carlos Sainz managed to get reinstated into third position for the restart. Obviously, there is an order from this, and technically the FIA needs to have an order that is very clear. And when only one car hasn't gone through the first sector, I think it's pretty safe to assume that he is the one at the back. But the rules are the rules. Zhou needed to get through that to have a comprehensive order. And so Carlos Sainz should be buying him a beer afterwards on Sunday night. That's the reason he managed to get third and hold on to it.
You know, sometimes you're unlucky, like there with that slight contact with Oscar. Sometimes you don't even get any puncture or anything in the car. And today I had a slight contact and I got the puncture and I was feeling gutted. And then suddenly the red flag that saved a bit my day. And from there onwards, really, like we expected. You know, pace was very strong in the race, but impossible to pass. I did everything I could to keep Lando under control, keep the safety car gaps, keep the pit stop gaps, and bring home a 1-3 for the team. That was the main priority.